call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, all members are present. Approval of the agenda, we have one addition, approve appointment of part-time police officer. Is there any other changes?
Yeah, item G would be the direction on the grader.
Okay, 7G, direction on road grader. Any other changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with those two additions?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the August 2nd, 2017 regular meeting. You have received them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, clarification? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2nd, 2017 regular meeting?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Seeing no one, our public open forum is closed. We have no public hearings, which brings us to our reports and presentations. Police Department monthly report. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Activity report for July 2017. Some of the numbers we had for July, we had 13 alarms. We did 4 K-9 assists for other agencies. We did 22 personal assists. We did 17 assists for businesses. We had 37 assists for other agencies. We had 50 citizen contacts, 14 dog complaints. We arrested 10 people for a small amount of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. We had 1 fleeing a police officer. We had 20 matter of information calls, 12 medicals. We had 6 accidents only. We had 32 suspicious things called in. We had 10 thefts. We gave out 279 verbal warnings. We did 17 welfare checks. So we had a total calls of 566. We gave out 279 verbal warnings for a total of 845 this month. Oh, and I left my sheet, sorry. Right back. So comparing that to June, we were up 106 calls, up 36 warnings given out for a total being up of 142. Comparing that to July of last year, everything was very similar in numbers. So very comparison. So we had the Sinclair Lewis days in July. I think everything went really pretty smooth. We had beautiful weather, so a lot of people in town. I think we need to work on maybe the street dance, some issues with that to clean up a little bit. Otherwise, I think everything went pretty well, unless you guys have heard some feedback on anything. Otherwise, the fair days, a lot of people in town for those days too, because the weather was very, very good. And basically, we had a few calls of lost kids and a few medicals and a couple other miscellaneous calls, but it was pretty quiet out there. So pretty good for all the people in town for the calls we had. So, any questions about that?
Questions, comments? Just one, July I know is one of the busiest months of the year anyway, so it's pretty much comparable
Yep.
to every other year. And as far as the Sinclair Lewis Day Street Dance, I know there needs to be better security, and I think it's one of them that the council's gonna have to sit down and, or
Yep.
representatives of the council along with the chief, sit down with the bars downtown and have a meeting and say, this is gonna happen, or we're gonna
Yep.
have to look at taking it away,
Yeah.
because it's getting bad.
Was the, I seem to recall that there used to be a check, ID check at the gate, and this year I noticed kids out, minors, even younger, after like 11 o'clock, so.
Correct, yep. Yeah, very disappointed about that. Future, I'd like to see maybe officers, them hiring officers to watch the two gates, and we need to start IDing. We need to keep kids out of that. I think that's what the Friday activities are for. It's for the kids. We don't need them in the crowd. I mean, we had lost kid calls at the dance, and I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think they should be there after that. It's pretty much for the adults. I think it should be 21 and up at that event, and yeah, we need to step it up with that,
Yeah.
security for that.
Was it a 21 or older event?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I don't think it ever has been.
Thought we did
They
it one
check-
year.
Checked
but,
IDs, but
Yeah,
one of
I-
the things is on this end of the street where they had the food opposite end of the band, there was no orange fence or anything around keeping people, so it was kind of wherever you
Yeah.
walk down the street, you could walk right in, so.
the only thing
That
I
was-
saw was they did a good job keeping people inside with drinks, but the IDing individuals was very lacking, so.
Right.
Other towns having troubles too, or?
I guess I haven't really heard any issues with street dance with other towns. I just trying to focus on ours, and we need to clean it up a lot better, I think, before something happens.
Well, not all.
I mean, the event itself was good, I believe, but
Yeah.
just keeping the younger kids out. We had a lot of minor, I shouldn't say a lot, but we had a few minor consumption tickets given out. So,
Okay, any other questions for Brian? Okay,
do you want to talk about the part-time, or should we do that?
we got that
Okay,
later
coming up.
on.
We'll do that then.
Thank you, Brian. Ambulance Department quarterly report.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here with the second quarter activity report for the ambulance, which you can see is an extension. I've started extending it from the first quarter, so you kind of still have those stats in front of you as well, and you can keep a running tally for the year then. So, April had 64 total activities, 20 of which were basic life support transfers, 4 advanced life support transfers, and 14 no loads. So 64 total calls for April, which is up just slightly from 58 a year ago and up from 39 10 years ago. And then we billed out a total of $52,401.40 in April. For the month of May, we had 52 total activities, 11 of which were BLS transfers, 4 ALS transfers, and then 10 no loads. And 52 for May is just down slightly from April of last year, or I'm sorry, May of last year, which was 57, and then up from 10 years ago, which was 47 runs for the same month. And then June, we had a rather busy month, 75 total activities, 22 of which were BLS transfers, 5 ALS transfers, and then 26 no loads. And 75 for the month of June is, you can see, down from 2016. We had, that's, I think, our record month ever. We had 91 activities that month a year ago, but still up from 10 years ago where we had 52 activities. So we billed out a total of $58,327.10 in that month. And then May was $43,275 that we billed out. So we're still doing a considerable amount of transfers along with our regular 911 medical calls that we get. We're still doing a lot of lift assist falls, where we go, a lot of those are our no loads where we just help them up and make sure they're okay, and then they're not hurt, so we don't transport them in. Crashes, that number's high, because, if we go out on a crash where there's multiple victims, even if we don't transport them, we'll make an activity report for each one just to document it. So that's why that's, rather high. It's at 25. It doesn't mean we've had 25 crashes, just 25 victims. And then, of course, our St. Michael's Hospital is still where we transport the majority of our local patients, and then St. Cloud Hospital is the #1 transport for our BLS and ALS transfers. And just, I've got the rundown of all the different hospitals that we've responded to with patients. July was pretty busy, but that will be reported with the fair and the Sinclair Lewis Days activities in the third quarter report then. Any questions for me?
Questions, comments? Keep doing the good work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission report.
Okay, you have in your packet, you have the Planning Commission meeting agenda from their August 8th meeting, and most of that meeting was talked about the building permit reports and some informational items. I did include the building permit reports in your packet as well for May, June, and July. I said in May there was 23 permits, June 4 and 7, and is that right, Heidi? Mm-hmm. Okay. And in June, there was 7 building permits. There's been 2 new residential dwelling permits as of the end of June. I think we've done some more since then. And then she also has building permits issued by month on page 20 of your packet, kind of shows historical data back to 2011. You can see that 2012 was when we had a lot of building permits, a lot of new roofs and siding from hailstorms at that time. So it kind of gives you an idea of how the permits have gone historically over the years. And then also, year-to-date, I guess it was through July, the new construction value has been about $5.5 million. I don't know, Heidi, this was your meeting. Is there anything else that you discussed at that meeting that you wanted to let them know about? No. Okay.
Have they set the scrap metal cleanup date yet? They haven't.
It is whatever that Saturday is nearest the 16th.
I think it was the 6th.
Is it the 16th of September?
Thank you.
Did Sarah get, that was thrown out there as a date at the meeting, but she didn't hear back yet?
Yeah,
Sure.
that I believe is the date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that going to be up at the Civic Center then?
It will be at the Civic
Okay.
Center, and there's another thing that we're working on that's not for sure yet. With the Ruby's Pantry, they're working on a kind of like a curbside trash to treasure, put your things out at the curb for people to come and get and switch it around, and then Ruby's Pantry would come and take stuff away that got left if the people didn't put it back in their homes, we're working with them. It's in conjunction with us, but it's really not us. It's them. So that'll be one other avenue for people to get rid of things that can't go to the scrap metal that may still be usable. So something to watch for, but that would be advertised as well if we do get that put together. We just met with them yesterday, so.
Okay, questions? Okay, we'll move on to action items. 7A, approve joint powers agreement with the City of Minneapolis, Super Bowl staffing.
Okay, I'm sure many of you know that the City of Minneapolis is hosting the Super Bowl, this next Super Bowl coming up, and they have reached out to Minnesota police officers across the state for help to cover all the events, because it goes on for like a week, and in your packet you do have a list of some of the events. So they did draft a joint powers agreement that Minnesota cities worked on, and it is in your packet, and that is something that kind of protects both cities, and it lays out if we let officers go there, how they get paid, who they're responsible for, who's responsible for them, whose employee they are, and that type of thing. And how it really is set up is they are our employee, we would pay them, we get paid back by the City of Minneapolis for those hours at an established rate. And so that's really what this joint powers agreement is just to set the framework up there. And then there would be a separate support agreement if we actually do decide to send someone down there. We do have Chief Fredericks and Sergeant Jensen, I guess, that have expressed interest in participating in the event. And so if we can make it work with our scheduling, we would come back again to a future council meeting to get that final approval and to have that support agreement. I don't know, Brian, if you have anything extra you want to talk about that's most important about this agreement, but really what this is the legal framework to make this happen. And so that's really what we're asking for tonight, is to approve that joint powers agreement with the city of Minneapolis.
Questions? Comments? Basically, it's just an agreement. It isn't saying that we're letting those guys go down there. That would come later. So, do I have a motion to approve the joint powers agreement with the city of Minneapolis?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Any other comments, questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7B, approve appointment of EMT candidate for schooling.
Ambulance Director Kathy Strufert has requested that we approve an additional candidate to attend the EMT classes. You recall at the last meeting, we did approve somebody to go to the class, and we do have a second one that we would like to appoint as well, and that is Destiny Schoolfield. And then that would be pending a positive background check, and then, of course, upon successful completion, she could be appointed as a probationary EMT. And so that will have 2 then that can go to this next class, and of course, then we have Ben Klink, who we also approved to go to a future class. And one of the reasons she's requesting this second one is we have since had another EMT say that she'll be taking less hours for some personal reasons. So to keep our roster full, we're looking to appoint Destiny Schoolfield to attend the EMT classes on behalf of the Sauk Center Ambulance Department.
Questions? Concerns? Do I have a motion to approve Destiny Schoolfield to attend EMT classes on behalf of the city of Sauk Center?
So moved.
Motion by Keith. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approve easements for 8th Street Lift Station redirect.
The city has a lift station at the east end of 8th Street. This is near the elementary school, which serves the last 2 homes on the street. And in the past, it served more homes, but when the school built and built the parking lot, homes were disconnected from that lift station. And so that station is now in need of repair or perhaps replacement. So they looked for an alternate solution to that repair, and that solution is to directional bore between houses to the north to hook into the 7th Street line, and we would just totally eliminate 8th Street lift station at that point. And so what you have in your packet is you have easements between the city and the property owners to allow that line to be there. So there's several easements in there, and there's a couple different scenarios in there because it depends on which driller they use, which direction they're going to go. Plus, there's an additional easement that'll be needed right at the end of 8th Street because that's actually school property, and they thought that that was city, and it's really not. So there would be one additional easement we would want your approval of at the same time. And I believe this was at Dave, this was at your board meeting Monday night?
Yep.
To talk about this. And it was my understanding that the curved is, the one with the curve on it was if it was one driller, but the straight line was if it was another driller. So they wanted to kind of have both easements laid out. So then we would execute whichever one was the one that we used. And Keith designed them, so he can certainly explain a little bit more about how that process is going to work.
I do have one comment for you and perhaps a kind of a question, procedural, that perhaps Vicki can answer. And that is that likely, after talking to the low bidder, there's likely going to be actually some change in some of the temporary construction easements. So, and obviously time is of the essence, so I guess the question part is whether we are able to craft perhaps a resolution that allows some additional easements that doesn't have to come back to you specifically, or if we could do that maybe at your workshop. I don't know if that could be that way or not, but there's probably some changes to easements that will be needed here in the near future, just because of some better directions and things that the driller wants to do and we think are a good way to go about it. So there'll be some changes. So I don't know.
I think an approval tonight, because it's the concept of how we're going to go, and then you could also have in your motion that would allow these minor changes affecting the same properties, just to accommodate, updated drilling plans. I mean, that would be appropriate, and then these wouldn't actually be executed until we had the exact one, and that's when it would be executed. So what we're giving your approval tonight is, yes, we're gonna run it this way, and we need the easements so that we can go in and do it. And between the engineer and the city attorney, and the contractor, they'll decide the exact best route, and that's what the easement will fall on.
For clarity, there'll probably be one extra parcel owner, which probably would be the school district.
Okay. Questions? No, the extra, I was gonna ask Dave, since you had this at the Water and Light meeting, this extra easement, was that brought to your attention then, or is that?
I was aware that there were going to be changes to the easements.
Okay, so
Yeah, we knew that.
you knew
that,
about it? Okay.
Yeah, because of the way things are going in, it would have to be a little different.
I didn't want the council to do something with Water and Light,
Yeah.
not knowing
No,
what's going on.
we are
so-
aware that those easements that were originally drawn up aren't really going to cover what the
Okay.
contractor says he needs.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to approve permanent and temporary easements allowing for the redirection of sewer lines from the 8th Street lift station with possible changes to other easements?
So moved.
We have a motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Second by Keith. Any other comments, questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approved safety training contract with SPUC, MMUA.
The MMUA Safety Training Agreement is up for renewal with the public utility. We participate with the utility at a 40% of the cost, so the city's share will go from $4,200 a year to $4,340, allowing us to continue to participate. And this is an October to September deal, and that's why it's coming up at this time of the year, because it's up for renewal. And I believe the public utility approved the agreement Monday night, and this is our approval to participate.
Questions?
We thought long and hard on this last year, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And we elected to stay with the program.
Okay. And that worked out good this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the safety training agreement with Sauk Center Public Utility?
So moved.
Got a motion by Keith. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5 in favor, none against. Park Board appointment.
We do have that one vacant park board position that we've had for this year after Matt Wessel decided not to re-up his appointment. And so this one is the term that it's through the rest of this year and then 2018 to December 31st. And, Ryan Relke has applied for that position. And so we're recommending to appoint Ryan Relke to the park board for the term effective September 1st and expiring December 31st of 2018.
Questions, comments? I talked to Ryan about this position. He came to me and asked me about it, all entails, and I went over it with him, and I'm glad to see that he put his name on the application, so. Do I have a motion to appoint Ryan Relke to the Park Board for a 1.25-year term effective September 1st, 2017, expiring December 31st, 2018?
So moved.
We have a motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve appointment of part-time police officer.
We had the interviews for the position of the part-time police officer. They were held on Monday, August 14th, and we do have a recommendation for the council. It is recommended that the city council appoint Chance Kostreba as a part-time police officer pending successful background check and psychological exam. So that is the recommendation of the interview committee from Monday.
Questions?
Define part-time. How many hours?
How many hours will the part-time do? The purpose of this part-time is to fill for vacations and that, so it could range anywhere from a few hours one week up to, they could take 4 shifts the next week. So there's not a set number of hours, but we kind of set that with the budget, putting a cap on it.
Is he employed by another municipality?
No. No, he is not.
Oh, fresh out of the academy? Okay. Thanks.
Question, any other questions, concerns? I know this was a item that we had talked about and knew that we were getting to the tipping point on staffing with the police department. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to mention that we have another part-time officer that put his existing one.
You wanna come up closer? Thank you.
We have another part-time officer, existing part-time officer, that will be putting in his resignation at the end of August here. So what I would like to impose on you, if I could refill that position with one of the 4 people I interviewed from this last interview. Basically just filling the position back up. So just hoping to get blessings for that.
I know they had interviews the other day, they had 4 people.
Interviewed 4, and I think 2 would.
2 of them were toward the top, and
Yep.
I talked to both the chief and the sergeant about things, so I don't have a problem with it.
No, you
sure.
don't have to.
Already been
Yeah.
interviewed, so.
Yeah,
Yep.
already been interviewed, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Do you want to make that
I don't know
part
how to
of
do
the
that.
motion?
why don't we do that?
Okay.
I'll talk to the second, next one in line and bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay,
'Cause,
yeah, that'll be better.
Because we'd like to take the time with Chance now to focus on him and get him trained in.
Mhm.
So by the time we get the one to replace the one that's leaving, the training process would take some time, so.
Right.
I'd like to do them individually.
Okay.
Kind of a risky
Sounds
name
good.
for a cop, isn't it?
We're taking a chance on them, so. we'll see.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Any other questions or concerns? Do I have a motion to approve appointment of Chance Castriba as a part-time police officer pending successful background and psychological testing?
So moved.
We have a motion by Heidi, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Keith. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7G, direction on the road grader.
So as you know, we've talked about this road grader, about how we want to proceed, and we did meet, and we have a couple options on the table yet. The one was to repair the existing grader, approximate cost $16,000, keep it on the road for 3 to 5 more years, and get our money that way. We have another option, would be to proceed with purchasing a new loader and putting our snow blower on the new loader and taking our old loader and converting it over with a wing to take the place of the grader for snow removal. That's number 2. And then the third one would just to lease a loader out for the year, for the winter, for the 5 months of the winter. So we kind of have 3 options. The first option, about $16,000 to repair our existing grader. The second option, by the time you buy a new loader, you're looking about $140 plus the snow plow, so you're like $180. You got that option. And then the third one would be to hire one out, like lease one for like $5,000 to $6,000 for the season, for the winter season. So we kind of have these 3 different directions that we could go with this, trying to think of the future of what we're going to do. Keith was in on the meeting. Warren was in on the meeting. Keith was leaning toward let's repair our grader, let's keep it on the road, and then let's plan ahead for the future loader. Warren was in on the meeting, and he was kind of more leaning toward, let's get the loader going now, let's not spend the money on the grader. So we kind of were split there. And so we're bringing it back for the full council for kind of some direction on, because if we are going to repair the grader, we need to get that started right now to get it done before snow flies. And so that is why we're here right now, tonight, before you. And Matt was in on the meeting. He can explain how each of these things would work, if you have some questions on that.
Questions?
It sounds like option 1 and 3 are almost a washout cost-wise. What did you think, Warren? You were at that meeting. What's your feeling?
Basically, my concern is, okay, if we spend 16,000 at the max fixing the road grader, you get it through another 5 years, and then eventually we end up with a new payloader anyway, because we're gonna need it. In 5 years, we could end up with a road grader that's basically on its last leg and another payloader that's on it, and we're back to square one. We went 5 years with two beat-up machines, basically, and we're only gonna have the one. What I was thinking was basically not repair the road grader and contract out for this year until we get better handle on how we wanna do things. I know Keith had differing.
My feelings were that we use the grader primarily for snow removal only. So I think it's gonna last all of the 5 years with a repair. I think if we go with the leasing a skid loader, or not a skid loader, leasing another payloader, we're going to use that year round. So that's probably going to wear faster, granted it may be new. And as far as having it contracted out, that's money that will never see any benefit or any chance of recouping that. I mean, that's just money out the window. So.
My concern is, what would you say, $140,000 or something for a loader? I imagine that's not in the budget right now.
No.
Any thoughts on where the funds are coming from?
No,
All right.
Not really.
not really. Basically, one of the ideas was lease to buy.
Okay.
You know, we lease it, we have, because basically the other payloader that we got the snow blower on is basically too small to be running the snow blower in a
Yeah,
way.
right,
It's, we're getting by, and I think just about once a year we break down with that thing anyway. I don't know how much more stress we're going, that's the reason why I don't know if we wanna limp along a road grader and then limp along an old payloader, and we could be just getting something better and starting out, because
What would the possibility of leasing for a set amount of time that we could look at the budget and decide what can we set aside per year with an eventual end date of purchasing, and then be able to recoup some of the cost of leasing by the sale of our loader? I don't know how many years what our budget would look like to be able to do that.
well, we already put money away in the capital improvement, or basically for the equipment fund
There
right
is a
now.
sinking fund, but we're looking at
We have a
drop.
sinking fund that we do put money in every year, but we're looking at, we're looking at down the road not too far, of a new plow truck,
Yeah.
which is a big purchase. And then this loader is a big purchase, so we've got, and then we have the sweeper, which will be a big purchase. We've got some when Public Works needs to buy a piece of equipment, it's big equipment. And so that's what we're trying to juggle. And now with this grader going out, is that going to prompt us to do the loader sooner than we might otherwise have done it? And what does the effect of that have on doing a plow truck down the road? Which one should we go with? And that's really what we were wrestling.
Because we don't want to jeopardize future purchases of equipment for this, but yet, do we want to keep doing Band-Aid fixes?
One question I had asked, and it's pretty much moot, but is the city going to be acquiring any more roads that may need to be graded during the summer in the not-too-distant future?
As of right now, I don't think there's anything.
And that was the answer.
No, unless somebody all of a sudden files for annexation that we don't know about,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen,
And that was just a question I had, so.
right? You know, I'm just looking at the number of snow events that we might have, you know, it
Yep.
varies. It could be 3,
Well,
it could
Farmer's
be
Almanac is
10.
telling us it's gonna be a terrible one.
Yeah, well,
Uh-oh.
you know, I'm just trying to justify having a piece of equipment sitting there that we're not gonna, use only maybe 6 times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. that makes
Compared to
sense.
where a
Yep.
payloader, if we contract buy to lease, we can use it year round. You know, or lease to buy, I should say. So
Well, I think,
Keith and I were on
Yeah.
opposite sides of the
Yeah,
table,
you
but
got-
he's the committee member, so.
You gotta kinda think too, how many more people are those companies subcontracting with too? Are we gonna be first on the list, or is their equipment gonna be out on, some county?
You mean
road?
as far as contracting?
Yeah.
I think Matt has addressed that already with some of the people. Matt, have you talked to some of the people you got about contracting? That we would be first before they could do what they were gonna do?
Right, because that'd be primary. I mean, we'd be number one. And then we'd be doing day after the event. So it wouldn't be during the event, we'd be doing it the second day, like we typically do removals. So there'd be lead time for notification to schedule when we're gonna do it. One day, basically, we got about 24 hours. So I don't fear that they won't come, but it's equipment issues, I don't quite have the control. So, but it's very viable option, plus we do get reimbursed by MnDOT for the 71 portion of that. So they'd bill me 100, I'd reimburse, or bill MnDOT like we currently are. Because currently we submit for reimbursement from MnDOT for the operation of our blade. So it kind of offsets, but it doesn't cover it all. One thing to think about repairing the blade is, if we take that 16,000 to repair the blade, it would get us approximately 2 winters of contracting, because we're looking at 80 to 100 hours a year. So that at $100 an hour, it's 8,000 to 10,000 a year. So we'd recoup our contract fees back real quick if we repair the blade. And we'd really only have to keep it around 2 to 5 years. I'm a little scared of doing the big purchase, how it's gonna impact the other needs down the road, but I do think eventually we're gonna get to a 2-loader setup, would be our goal, most likely, and eliminate the blade. But it's hard to pencil out a $16,000 repair, because you look at it, you spend $16,000 and your value of your equipment isn't $16,000. So it doesn't make sense that way, but if you look at it versus hour to hour, us contracting it out, it does make sense in a real quick time, 2 to 3 years. So I'm kind of suggesting that if we can repair it, buy us 3 years, that'll give us time to efficiently plan properly for what we want to do with our bigger equipment purchases. Because we're going to need to purchase a loader and replace a loader, and then to have 2, and then we also have a plow truck in that cycle too, and then a street sweeper that's nearing 20 years. So if we can really get into that window where we get everything updated, if we can, then you can cycle them out real easy by trading off. But right now, when we operate them to 0 value, it's real hard to get back in again, especially with cooperative purchasing, meaning we can buy them very competitively. So we're not there now, but that would be the goal.
Right. Basically, the street department is trying to get on the same schedule we do with the ambulances and everything, where we can
Exactly.
rotate it and still
Yep,
have some value.
exactly.
You know, for how many years with that road grader,
It's an 83.
it's an
yeah,
83,
I have a
we've,
long time.
you know,
So-
you 16,000 into an 83 road grader when it's basically not worth much.
No, so when you look at the
Right.
cost of the repair versus the value of the equipment, it does not make sense.
Right.
Doesn't. But if you look at the value of us contracting it out for 2 years, you can recoup that 16,000 real quick.
And buy us some time at the same time.
and then buy us a little time to hopefully budget more into a sinking fund and make some educated decisions. Like, we're not pressuring you to spend $140,000, this is an education process. But we're at a point where I need a decision for this winter, whether we're repairing, contracting, or purchasing.
If you repair the road grader, what kind of guarantee we gonna get on that motor?
None.
None?
No.
So it might
There's
last
no
a week and
guarantee.
blow up again.
I mean, you're exactly right. It's a very big risk. I don't think it's a real big risk though, because, I mean, it's essentially a 40-50 tractor engine, and there's lots of set model 70s John Deere's still going to be operated after being repaired. So I think the repair is safe, a pretty viable option, but guarantees, no.
Okay.
So if we don't repair it, we're gonna end up contracting this winter anyway.
Yeah, if I'm sitting in a position where we choose not to spend the repair, I'm going to have to contract our windrowing
For this winter, for sure.
for this winter for sure. So we can buy time that way too.
So that's,
That's an option too.
$8,000 right off,
But
too.
when you look at that, I'm gonna spend $5,000 to $8,000 on that.
Yeah,
So, not saying that, to me, that's the easiest option, you just pay it and schedule it and have faith they'll be there. I don't know financially it's the best decision, because if we can get this thing running, it's probably worth 10 grand in 5 years. The value's not going down from here, it's just whether it's running or not is a big factor.
One of the things is on the hours of use, we're thinking 80 to 100 hours a year. Well, we know that's only half, because in the winter, part of that's grading roads.
Yes, yeah,
So
there's
instead of
summertime.
that $8,000 figure, you're actually only looking at maybe $4,000.
And we've actually, that's 80 hours, 83 hours is what we did last year, and we actually phased it out of the snow plowing. So we used it less last year, and we intend to keep doing that. So that's a pretty good number, I would say, hour number.
So the contract for 1 year would be say $4,000. Which, if you look at it that way, then if you spend 16, then you can make it 4 years, but there's still no guarantee
Yep.
Right.
that motor's gonna.
4 years sounds like it might be a stretch.
Right.
I'm just thinking that I hate to be on a time constraint,
I know.
buying a
yeah,
$140,000 piece of equipment.
Right.
Right.
And that's what it seems like if we do, it's all a quick jump and get going.
And
We actually have like
that's-
200,000 in our sinking fund, so we have enough fund, and that doesn't include 35,000 from our 17 contribution. So a new plow truck is 160, 180 easily, and that's what the next equipment purchases, so we got that covered. It's just, how's it gonna affect the loader replacement down the road? So,
Basically, it's on the agenda tonight, because if we're gonna fix it, he's gotta get it into the repair shop now.
Yep.
yeah.
If we're not, he needs to know that too, so.
I guess my feeling right now is you think we should just repair it.
I honestly do. Initially, I did not, in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was a phased-out piece of equipment, and we were gonna go a different direction. And then I get to your point, Dave, where it's like, I don't like getting forced into purchasing equipment I'm not really sure that's the way we're gonna go. And how it affects down the road purchases. That's what I'm concerned about more than anything, actually. So it's a quick, buy us some time, allow us to save some money, get us back on our feet. It's another tool. If it does go down, then we're forced into contracting, and we made a ill decision on the repair, but that's part of old equipment.
Comments?
All right.
Someone want to make a motion, or which is the council's wishes?
I'll make a motion, we proceed with repairing our current grader.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to repair the grader. Any other comments, questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstentions? Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against. Unfinished business, update on 2018 capital improvement project, hospital area.
This is Keith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last meeting, we talked about, update was we're just getting started really into the stormwater portion of the feasibility report for this area. And you may recall that we kind of had to look at a fairly large area to figure out how this would all fit together, including, basically everything sort of north of the river and east of the lake and all the way up through the golf course and that whole area. So so it was quite a bit to look at. But the good news is we're pretty well through with some of our preliminary analysis, and I'm here to share a little bit of that with you and also to get some feedback from you on some of the options that we are looking at. In general, I just kind of want to talk about kind of where we're at with the stormwater, just so you kind of know what sort of we're thinking the general spine might look like. And when we do stormwater systems, I mean, it's usually a combination of pipes and potentially ponds. Pipes and ponds in combination are the cheapest solutions we can come with. Unfortunately, a lot of times in existing areas, ponds get very difficult to come by, and we end up with pipes. As an example, the 4th Street project really had no ponding. We end up with large pipes at the discharge ends, and that gets very expensive versus, say kind of crudely, digging a hole in the ground is a lot cheaper than pipe. So that's why we try to utilize ponds when we can. We have found a couple of locations that we could use ponds in this particular area, and I'll get to those. Those are the drawings that you have in front of you. But in general, our system looks like basically a new trunk that starts down at the river, just south in the park area, south of Pine and 1st Street North. Comes up to Pine, that intersection, goes up Pine. There would be another trunk that would go down 2nd Street, 2nd and Pine, towards Main Street and go up Main Street, and that would be essentially the state's system, if you will, on Main Street, sort of a separate one. And they would also then continue north on Pine from 2nd up to 3rd, and then go across in a couple ways, which you have in front of you, and I'll skip that part. But essentially goes up to 4th Street, goes up 4th to Oak, up Oak to 5th, over to Elm, and up Elm to Country Club Road. And there's also another system that comes down from Main Street, because we were looking at Main Street as well, about 1/3 of the way, sort of north of Country Club Road, all the way up to Lakeshore, and then comes south and ties into this system. So, and there is a ponding, infiltration pond related to that Main Street system as well. So there is a pond that's basically more of a linear ditch type pond, if you will, that would be proposed on Main Street. And we'll talk more about that as we get towards the feasibility report, and you have that in front of you. But just so you know, there's another small ponding area up there. But that's kind of generally what we're looking at. Pipe sizes are from like 21-inch to, and the very downstream end is like 48-inch. So in that whole system, that's kind of the pipe sizing that we're looking at, okay? What I have in front of you in this graphic is the ponding that I discussed. And first of all, if you look at the intersection at the top of those graphics, don't get too concerned about that. That's only my kind of idea that didn't come from the state or anything. And the reason I have that is that's kind of the worst case scenario from a runoff perspective. So that's why I kind of drew that in and saw how much impervious that might be in that. So that's why it's there. So please don't get hung up on that. We don't really know at all what that intersection might look like at this stage. I wanted to be a little conservative on it. But what you have in front of you is a couple of options for ponding, and this reduces our pipe sizing as we continue on downstream. Option 1, which is the left side of the page, shows a ponding area that is, about the third, basically a third in Main Street in through there. You can see the sizing. Don't get too wrapped up in the exact details of the pond, but the sizing of it is correct. That's about the size that it needs to be. There's a little bit of room, as you can see in there, for some movement of it in different areas, but that's kind of what it would look like. I know there is some discussion of that could be a potential for the schoolhouse, so that's kind of showed it there, just to get an idea how that potentially could fit in that area. But you can see the pipes coming in from 4th Street, coming down to the south, and then the discharge from that would be down 3rd Street to Pine Street, essentially. And so that's where that is. I'll talk a little bit about some discharge things in just a second. The next option, option 2, essentially moves that pond to the north there, kind of north of 4th Street. And that pond's a little bit larger, and the reason for that is there's actually ponding that's in that ditch of Highway 71 now. In option 2, that's included in there, so that's why that one's a little bit bigger. Option 1, there is a pond there, but it's not shown in that graphic, but there's still a pond in that ditch. That's why the one's a little bit smaller than the other one, because there really is sort of 2 combined, if you will, in option 2. So, but you can see once again where the discharge goes into the pond, kind of from 4th Street, and then how it comes out in 4th Street out to Pine and comes down. Both alternatives connect down into 3rd Street and Pine. That's where those connection would be. Now, we can utilize in the interim, one thing I talked about before is how do we make this work while we're sort of waiting for Main Street to get redone or reconstruction on the east side of Main, which we're not looking at this point in time. The good news is that system can handle this discharge into there. It does surcharge some, but it will function, it will work in order to take now it's not ideal, but it will work for a period of time until such time as we're able to get into that part of the area and do some upgrades in there. And part of that might come with the Highway 71 project, and part of it could come as we do maybe reconstructs a little bit further east, say from Pine into the east from there. So it will function at this point in time. I can also say from one of our flooding issues at Lake Street in Maine, this option by itself, without doing anything in Main Street, will reduce that flooding about 50% at this stage. I can't make that go away until we actually can get into Main Street and do some additional piping through there. So when we have that sizing kind of figured out already, it's kind of like 30-inch basically in through there is kind of what is required. Or maybe it was 27-inch up, and it gets a little bit larger as it goes downstream. So I can't get rid of it at this point, but we can make it quite a bit better for the next so many years until such time as that reconstruction would happen on Highway 71. So kind of in a nutshell, that's, the good news is we sort of have options that will work in the short term, in the interim, and wait for future improvements down the line. So we have some time that we can work with to, for funding for one, as well as to work through with MnDOT on their reconstruction schedule for 71. So I thought that was pretty good. I wasn't sure how that was going to all come together, if we were just going to basically come to a big brick wall and we just weren't really going to be able to come up with a solution that did much at this stage in time, but thankfully we are. So that was a real good news and relief for me. So kind of what I'm looking for tonight as it relates to these options that you have in front of you is some discussion as to if any of these are, no timeout, there's no way that we want to even consider anything like this, just so I kind of have some direction as to how we want to kind of finish this up, put the final costs together, and to go into the feasibility report. The alternatives to these, if say neither one of these is possible, essentially is larger pipes from basically 4th and Main all the way down to the river. And then we do kind of come to that brick wall now as to, I can only do so much. I don't really have any place to put it at this point in time. So it becomes much more difficult, I would say, for that, that interim time period at this stage. Unless we do run pipes all the way down to the river, that obviously increases costs at this stage, and it also gets into areas of now we got to rip up the road, and depending on when you want to undertake reconstruct in that area, then we got to redo the roads again, and that kind of thing. So there's double costs if we go down the roads too far, if you will, at this stage, and then have to tear them up later on. So some things to think about. So I guess I'll throw it to you for any questions you may have. And then once again, kind of looking for some thoughts and direction.
Questions? Comments?
These are, oh, sorry, I wanted to say, these are infiltration ponds too, by the way, so the bottoms of them, essentially the bottoms, a little bit up on the sides, and the bottoms would be designed with certain mulches and that to allow, really encourage that infiltration. So we are getting infiltration in these, either one of these options as well. It's all good sand up there, so we're trying to utilize our ground as much as possible through here.
So I was just gonna say, are there any incentives from, say, state agencies to go with a holding pond as opposed to?
You know, we can look at that. We could look at that with the watershed. You know, there might be some. I haven't got to that point yet, so I'm kind of more looking for a little bit bigger picture than that at this stage. But I wouldn't count on it, but maybe there could be something that we could look for that. But, you know, we know the watershed wants to encourage infiltration, so this would be in line with which. Yeah, this would be something that they would be favorable to. They would like to see this. They've asked for that on other reconstruct projects, and we haven't really been able to accommodate. But this does allow us to do this in this area. And I did mention that one up on Main Street is proposed to also have some infiltration as well, further north.
I guess holding ponds, yeah, they're kind of the thing to go, but I'm a little nervous about having a holding pond either on the same property as a ball field playground or across the street. You know, sure, yeah, it's probably designed to be soaking away, but you know darn well that's not gonna happen, because it's happening with the one that we got down by Coburn's. Now
They're
we
gonna hold
got,
some water.
they're gonna hold some water. And until Main Street is done, is there any way we can put larger catch basins and just along Main Street going north to Country Club Road and shoot everything straight west?
Well, into
Sauk Lake? That's where it's going now.
that could be possible, you know, to pull stuff up and all dump it down into there. I mean, that's something we could look at doing. I'm not sure, you know, if that's you would like to do that versus, you know, putting essentially more drainage area than what's going there now into the lake. That could be looked at unfavorably by agencies, but I can't say that for sure, but it certainly could be.
The reason why I say that is because this is gonna be a big enough project the way it is going, if we decide to go all the way up to the lake on the other side of the old country club. And then to have Highway 71 come through with the cost of that, are we gonna be able to afford to even put any pipes coming out on the east side of the road to get rid of the water out of these holding basins? You know, that's all money that, do we want to force the future councils into spending because we didn't look at that factor?
Well, one thing just to clarify, as it relates to 71, there will have to be upgrades on 71. They really don't have too many options other than to run it someplace. They're going to end up having to pay for some of that infrastructure. Now, that would be a percentage basis.
Right.
It'll be done, you know, down the line a little bit, but they would be sharing portions of those costs.
Right. Basically, what they pay for is whatever runoff of the middle 26 feet, right?
Well, they essentially pay for their right-of-way, if you will,
Right.
through there, yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's a chunk as it relates to 71 through there,
Right.
so. And these ponds also, just so you know, these are 10-year event ponds, which is about a 4-year rainfall event. So even larger events, you know, things larger than those, these ponds would spill over. And ultimately, the low spot in this area is right back down to Lake Shore, or to Lake Street in Maine. That's where it would go. Now, that's what happens, essentially would happen now, but a good chunk of that water would be taken off and put someplace else. But on larger events that occur fairly infrequently, these ponds, either one of these options would overflow. We only have room to put a 10-year event in there, just to be clear on that as well.
Right. Any other comments, questions?
I wonder about the priority of doing this now, knowing that the road is going to be rebuilt and not knowing what MnDOT's design will be. That I wonder if maybe we shouldn't be waiting. I hate to see us putting something in and then finding out that they want to do something in the road that makes it not feasible. We have to change it around and.
Basically wasting our
Yeah,
money
and
on a
wasting our
storm
money
area.
on
Yeah.
a storm thing that's gonna all change in a few years.
Well, that's kind of one benefit of option one, which is, it's one because that was the first one I really came up with, is it really is an area that shouldn't be impacted by
Yeah.
MnDOT. Option two potentially could be, depending on what they want to do with that intersection. But one kind of is a standalone. It really, I would see little chance of there being an interference with
Yeah,
71's
I don't think we
reconstruction.
get in the way of their project. I just wonder when they go through and do their project, how they would affect stormwater flows that, you know, we kind of planned for certain things and maybe now they're not quite going where we had planned.
I would definitely anticipate that with the intersection, that they're going to, just them by themselves are going to need to do some amount of ponding in that area because they'll be increasing impervious in that, so. And what's there now is basically the line lock. It doesn't go anywhere in that intersection. It drains to that ditch on the east side, and there's essentially a drain with rock in the bottom of it, and it infiltrates away. There is no outlet. I'm quite sure they won't want that to continue. So there will be likely something that they would do in and of themselves in that intersection. This kind of takes care, we did look at all the runoff from the right-of-way, so this kind of takes everything into account for that whole drainage shed. So it includes MnDOT's water. So that is something we'd want to talk to them about, is to, you know, how much of this do you wish to pay for now? Or perhaps we get recouped, you know, a few years down the line from now.
And where that pond in north of 4th Street, is that all basically, is that land that would have to be purchased?
Yeah, and kind of in the upper right to that, it shows you the number of acres in an easement area, .785.
Yeah.
So that's how much would have to be acquired for an easement.
So basically, if we wait until Highway 71 goes through and the state's got issues with their stormwater and have to do with ponding, they'd have to purchase it instead of us.
They might have
And
to
we'd
purchase
save
some.
ourselves some money and a lot of legal paperwork.
Likely they would have less, but they may have to purchase some. I mean, the vast majority of that is our water, so.
Right. But it'd be a shared cost rather than us do it.
Well, in partial of that now could be shared too. I mean, once we get to kind of what we think we might want to do, the next step for me is actually to go and sit down with MnDOT and talk about this and try to figure out what we might be able to do now and what kind of funding perhaps we could do now, and make sure that we're all on the same page, because, you know, this project is part in front of us right now. Theirs is, you know, whatever it is, 7 years down the line from now, and we want to make sure that we're on the same page with what they might be thinking. As I said, that's kind of one of the reasons. One is kind of a least risk option for for both parties, but just from a interference or anything perspective.
One of the things that I was just thinking about, you know, at the corner of Getty and 8th, we put like, what, 6 catch basins in that area to catch that water, to keep from going down. Is there anywhere in this area, or maybe if we even go underneath Highway 71 and just put one catch basin in the middle of that and shoot it straight west down 4th Street when we got that tore up? If that wouldn't be, and then that whole design could be changed when MnDOT comes in, but we only got the little bit of the expense of going underneath Main Street and then discharge at the west end of 4th Street.
If we want to try and change and pick things up and go west on 4th, I mean, that can be looked at, and then we could kind of run that up the flagpole a little bit and see what agencies might think of that. But that is an option. I mean, we could put a number of catch basins in there, try to pick as much water as possible, and relieve the situation downstream.
Basically, then we'd be still giving ourselves 6 years of eliminating a water problem, but we're not messing with MnDOT's design either. And for that little bit of, for the amount of money that we spend for doing that, I think we probably come out ahead. I don't know.
I think
It's
so.
just, I'm just throwing it out there because I think there's other options than just ponds.
Well, in terms of, storage, there's underground storage that could be considered just from a storage perspective. Those get pretty spendy. So it's not an option that we'd like to go to until there's really expensive land on top of it. But that's been done, in more downtown areas, under parking lots, those kinds of things. But it gets expensive to do that, way, way more expensive than just an open pond like this. As I said, option 1 really doesn't have much impact on MnDOT at this stage, but that is obviously a question of that location and if that's an appropriate location or not. And really, that's kind of your direction as to if that's something we want to truly avoid.
Other comments? Concerns? You basically want us to pick kind of which option to go with now as far as feasibility, or?
It could be one or the other or neither, of which then we need to start looking at other potential options, which really are going to be pipe.
Do you know
And
the size of the storm sewer going down 4th Street?
The existing?
Yeah.
Well, I can't, off the top of my head, it's not that large, but I don't
There's a
remember
storm
off the top of my head.
center at the end of that.
There is, yeah, yep. But it's much, as an example, the end of Oak Street at 4th, I believe, if I recall, is a 27-inch pipe. And I want to say, with design, and what is currently there is, I might have it with, but I think it's 21 maybe at the very largest, or smaller. I think it's even smaller. But what's there now is not at all adequate for, even starting all the way at Country Club, the north end, it's not large enough.
Right.
So there's,
I'm just thinking if we get a cooling effect out on that end, bring all that water.
one of the problems is that there's enough room. We could perhaps figure out, if we did something, say, in the cul-de-sac area, well, now if we put a pond there, we really don't have now a cul-de-sac. So now we have a road issue we have to try and figure out what to
I'm
do.
thinking of the cleanup issue for the people that work in that particular area.
Sure. And I don't know who they all are, but. But, so, we kind of have to go different directions depending on kind of what your desires are. This, I think, is some of the cheaper from an overall perspective. It's probably the cheapest of things for us to do. We do have to eventually do some upsizing of pipes in that area, you know, basically east of Main, you know, south of 4th Street, that older area of town, that there are things that will need to be done there. Those pipes aren't large enough at all at this stage. So those are in our future. It's just a question of when in our future.
So what's the council's wishes, or
I don't know
option
whether-
one, option two, or neither one?
At this moment, probably neither one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of where
agree.
I'm leaning.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Yep.
have the discussion with MinDOT, kind of.
See if they can get some input on what's going on now. You know, or what their plans
Yeah.
could possibly be, and we know it's 7 years from now, but they actually start designing about 5 years before the project, I think.
Yeah, yep.
You know, so we're only talking 2 years. They gotta have some kind of idea, you would think.
Yeah, you think they'd have to, I don't know.
They got the plans from when they were here in 91. I'm pretty sure they'll be tweaking all of that, but
Sure. Well, we can look at what they say. Now, if we don't want to do ponds, we need to do pipes, then we also got to look at, if we go to, say, to the lake, you know, how, you know, where do agencies come down on that? Is that going to be?
Flooding has not been a problem on
no. But it's a reconstruct down 4th Street anyway, so basically we could put a larger storm sewer in there to catch it and take it that way, as long as other agencies don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But it's already existing, so it's really hard for them to
Right.
say no.
Well, yeah, there's some larger areas, so there certainly could be a no, but, you know, we can certainly ask the questions.
That's a chance I'd take.
You know, and see what they say about going that direction. And then, you know, if that meets strong resistance, then we're kind of back to potentially this options and figure out how do we do this. You know,
Right.
it's just, we're a little bit hemmed in by issues, if you will, on either end. The lake being on one end and sort of space on the other end that we have in front of you, so. Just don't have
I know it'll
lots.
probably hold things up, but I don't know. I think general consensus says we're not happy with either one of these options.
Okay,
Just have you keep exploring
Okay.
other avenues.
I'll look for I will meet with MinDOT, see where they're kind of at. We'll talk about going west and how that might or might not work.
Might work,
And we'll see what we can do for other solutions here, and I'll bring it back.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have no new business. Then brings us to our consent agenda. We have a schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $84,146.54, paid claims of $355, for a total of $84,501.54. July checks totaling $584,680.42. We received contributions from Men's Card Playing Group of $175.51 to be allocated to the Senior Center, and $40 from Shirley Finken to be used for dog food for Sunny. That's resolution number 2017-50. We want to thank that group and individual for those contributions. We have Community Connections of Sauk Center has submitted an application and permit for a one-day temporary on-sale liquor license for a fall demo derby at the Stearns County Fairgrounds on October 14th, 2017. The fee and the certificate of insurance are being provided. We also have resolution number 2017-51 approving an off-site gambling permit for the Sauk Center Youth Hockey Association. The permit would allow pull tabs for an event to be held on September 16th, 2017 at the Sauk Center Civic Arena. Is there any questions, comments or concerns about the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Informational items, Vicki?
I have a couple informational items this evening. The first one is the League of Minnesota Cities regional meetings, and one of the annual regional meetings this year is going to be hosted by the city of Melrose, so it's right next door. I did include the agenda. If anyone is interested in attending, please let Nikki know, and she'll get you signed up for it. But these meetings are the regional ones. They're kind of, generally, you have about half city council, mayor, and about half staff. So it's not really geared for one over the other, and there's kind of a good mix of people. So kind of give you an idea, versus the loss control meetings that they have in the spring are more staff-related. This is their one regional meeting where a lot of the mayors and councilmen come out for that. The second item I have in there is the notice from CenterPoint Energy. They have submitted for a increase on their rates for 2018. Well, that's just an application to the Minnesota Public Utility, but they have to let us know these things because of our franchise. And the third item is the project status report on the comprehensive plan. This was the period of June 1st to July 31st. And it's kind of a summary of the activities that they've completed and then the things that they will be completing. And we're at the point now where the survey's done, they've done a lot of gathering information, a lot of demographics. Now they're going to be putting that together, and then we'll be having some staff meetings, some task force meetings, and then some public meetings about some recommendations and some goals and analyze that. We're anxiously awaiting the results of the survey. So they had a good percentage of survey results that they have said have been returned, and so we'll be able to see what those that took the survey will be asking for, and that'll be presented to you as well, so you'll be able to see those results as soon as they're available. Otherwise, you kind of have the detail of how they're moving forward on the process, and now the time has come that now we'll start having more involvement other than just the information gathering stage. Now we'll be receiving that information, putting it into goals and objectives and public input. So that's where we are with that process.
Any questions on the informational items? Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.